it's Maria and Ariana from Still Dreaming Homestead. Ariana's here with me today and I'm really happy to have her visit. She just helped me make some beef stew that I'm going to can tonight. Well, we're going to continue reading out of our book, Little House in the Big Woods. This is a story by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And Ariana, did you know that people didn't always get to buy white sugar? No, they didn't always get to. And so these people are going to make their own sugar or something sweet. It's called the sugar snow. For days the sun shone and the weather was warm. There was no frost on the window in the mornings. All day the icicles fell one by one from the eaves with soft smashing and crackling sounds in the snowbanks beneath. The trees shook their wet black branches and chunks of snow fell down. Have you ever seen snow fall off a tree? No? When Mary and Laura pressed their noses against the cold window pane, they could see the drips of water from the eaves on the bare branches of the trees. The snow did not glitter. It looked soft and tired. Under the trees, it was pitted where chunks of snow had fallen and the banks beside the path were shrinking and settling. Then one day, Laura saw a patch of bare ground in the yard. She could see the dirt. All day it grew bigger and bigger, and before night the whole yard was nothing but bare mud. Is mud good? Only the icy path was left in the snowbanks along the path and the fence and beside the woodpile. "Can't I go out and play?" Laura asked, and Ma said, "May, Laura? May I go out and play?" she asked. "You may tomorrow," Ma promised. That night, Laura woke up shivering. The bed covers felt thin, and her nose was icy cold. Ma was tucking another quilt around her. "Snuggle close to Mary," Ma said, "and you'll get warm." In the morning, the house was warm from the stove, but when Laura looked out the window, she saw that the ground was covered in soft, thick snow. It snowed again. All along the branches of the trees, the snow piled like feathers, and it lay in mounds along the top of the rail fence and stood up in great white balls on top of the gateposts. Do you like it when it snows?
Yeah.
What do you like to do when it snows?
My mom comes and play with me.
Have your mom come and play with you? That would be fun. Pa came in, shaking the soft snow from his shoulders and stamping it from his boots. "It's sugar snow," he said. Laura put her tongue quickly to a little bit of the white snow that lay in a fold on his sleeve. That's what she did. But it was nothing but wet on her tongue, just like any other snow. She was glad that nobody had seen her taste it. "Why is it sugar snow, Pa?" she asked him. But he said he didn't have time to explain now. He must hurry away. He was going to Grandpa's. Grandpa lived far away in the big woods, where the trees were closer together and larger. Laura stood at the window and watched Pa, big and swift, swift means fast, and strong, walking away over the snow. His gun was over his shoulder. His hatchet and powder horn hung at his side, and his tall boots made great tracks in the soft snow. Laura watched him till he was out of sight in the big woods. It was late before he came home that night. Ma had already lit the lamp when he came in. Under one arm, he carried a large package, and in the other hand was a big covered wooden bucket. Wonder what's in that bucket.
Probably fish.
Fish, you think? Well, let's find out. Here, Carolyn, he said, handing the package in the bucket to Ma, and then he put the gun on its hooks over the door. If I'd met a bear, he said, I couldn't have shot him without dropping my load. But he laughed. And if I dropped that bucket and bundle, I wouldn't have had to shoot him. I would have stood and watched him eat what's in them and lick his chops. Can you lick your chops? Yeah. Ma unwrapped the package, and there were 2 hard brown cakes, each as large as a milk pan. She uncovered the bucket, and it was full of dark brown syrup. Here, Laura and Mary, Pa said, and he gave them each a little round package out of his pocket. They took off the paper wrappings, and each had a little hard brown cake with beautiful crinkled edges. Bite it, Pa said, and his eyes twinkled. Can you pretend like you're biting it? Can you do that? Each of them bit off one little crinkle, and it was sweet. It crumbled in their mouths. It was better than even Christmas candy. Maple sugar, said Pa. Supper was ready, and Laura and Mary laid the little maple sugar cakes beside their plates while they ate the maple syrup on their bread. Do you like maple syrup on pancakes? Yeah. After supper, Pa took them on his knees as he sat before the fire, and he told them about his day at Grandpa's and the sugar snow. All winter, Pa said, Grandpa's been making little wooden buckets and little troughs. And he made them out of cedar and white ash, for those woods don't give a bad taste to the maple syrup. To make the troughs, he split out little sticks as long as my hand and as big as my 2 fingers. Near one end, Grandpa cut the sticks halfway through and split one half off. This left him a flat stick. Then, with a bit, that's what we would call a drill, he bored a hole lengthwise through the square part. And with his knife, he whittled the wood till it was only a thin shell around the hole. The flat part of the stick he hollowed out with his knife till it was a little trough. He made dozens of them, and he made 10 new wooden buckets. He had them all ready when the first warm weather came, and the sap began to move in the trees. When it gets warm, the tree, after it's been snowing and stuff, the trees, the sap goes up in them so that the leaves will come out. And this is what let's see if I can do this. This is what the buckets and those little troughs looked like. Then he went into the maple woods with the bit, that's like a drill, and he bored a hole in each maple tree, and he hammered the round end of the little trough into the hole, and he set a cedar bucket on the ground under the flat end. And it looked like this. Can you see that? The sap, you know, is the blood of the tree. It comes up from the roots when warm weather begins in the spring, and it goes to the very tip of each branch and twig to make the green leaves grow. Well, when the maple sap came to the hole in the tree, it ran out of the tree, down the little trough, and into the bucket. Oh, didn't it hurt the poor tree? Laura asked. No more than it hurts you when you prick your finger and it bleeds, said Pa. Every day, Grandpa puts on his boots and his warm coat and his fur cap, and he goes out into the snowy woods and gathers the sap. With a barrel on a sled, he drives from tree to tree and empties the sap from the buckets. into the big barrel. Then he hauls it away to a big iron kettle that hangs by a chain from a cross timber between two trees. So this is what it looks like when he's going from tree to tree, getting the sap and dumping it in that big bucket. He empties the sap into the iron kettle. There's a big bonfire under the kettle, and the sap begins to boil. Grandpa watches it carefully. The fire must be hot enough to keep the sap boiling, but not hot enough to make it boil over. Every few minutes, the sap must be skimmed. Grandpa skims it with a long wooden handle ladle that he made of basswood. When the sap gets too hot, Grandpa lifts ladlefuls of it high into the air and pours it back in slowly. This cools the sap a little and keeps it from boiling too fast. When the sap has boiled down just enough, he fills the buckets with the sap. And so this, let me show you here, is what it looks like when he's working that. That's a big old kettle, isn't it? And a big fire under it. After that, he boils the sap until it grains when he cools it in a saucer. The instant the sap is graining, Grandpa jumps to the fire and rakes it all out from underneath the kettle. Then, as fast as he can, he ladles the thick syrup into the milk pans that are standing ready. In the pans, the syrup turns to cakes of hard brown maple sugar. So that's why it's the sugar snow, because Grandpa is making sugar? Asked Laura. And see, there he goes, he's working. No, Pa said, it's called sugar snow because the snow this time of year means that men can make more sugar. You see, this little cold spell in the snow will hold back the leafing of the trees, and that will make the sap run longer. When there's a long run of sap, that means Grandpa can make enough maple sugar to last all year for common everyday use. When he takes his furs to town, he will not need to trade for much store-bought sugar. He will only get a little store sugar to have on the table when company comes. Grandpa must be glad there's a sugar snow, Laura said. Yes, Pa said. He's very glad. He's going to sugar off again next Monday, and he says we must all come. Yes, Pa said. He's very glad. Pa's blue eyes twinkled. He had been saving the best for last, and he said to Ma, "Hey, Carolyn, there'll be a dance." Ma smiled. She looked very happy. She laid down her mending for a minute. "Oh, Charles," she said, "do you like to dance?" "Yeah, me too." Then she went on with her mending, but she kept on smiling. She said, "I'll wear my delaine." Ma's delaine dress was beautiful. It was dark green with a little pattern all over it that looked like ripe strawberries. I hope nobody eats her dress. A dressmaker had made it in the East, in a place where Ma came from before she married Pa and moved west to the big woods of Wisconsin. Ma had been very fashionable before she married Pa, and a dressmaker had made her clothes. The delaine was kept wrapped in paper and laid away. Laura and Mary had never seen Ma wear it, but she had shown it to them once. She'd let them touch the beautiful dark red buttons that buttoned the basque up the front, and she had shown them how neatly the whalebones were put in the seams, inside with hundreds of little cross stitches. It showed how important the dance was. If Ma was going to wear the delaine dress, Laura and Mary were excited. But I think the cat was just sleeping. They bounced up and down on paws and knees. Oops, sorry. Like this. Can you bounce? Yeah. Up and down on paws and knees and asked questions about the dance until at last he said, "Now you girls run along to bed. You'll know all about the dance when you see it. I have to put on new fiddle strings." There were sticky fingers and sweet mouths to be washed. Then there were prayers to be said. By the time Laura and Mary were snug in their trundle bed, Pa and the fiddle were both singing, while he kept time with his foot on the floor. And this is what he sang. "I'm Captain Jinks of the Horse Marines. I feed my horse on corn and beans, and I often go beyond my means. For I'm Captain Jinks of the Horse Marines. I'm captain of the army." And that is the end of this chapter, Sugar Snow. Now, I just want to ask you a question. Can you look at me for a minute? Do you have a horse? What's your horse's name?
Kindle.
Kindle. Have you ever rode Kindle? Yeah. Is Kindle a wild horse? No. What color?
Yellow.
Yellow.
I mean golden.
Kind of a golden, yeah.
All golden.
All golden. And he's such a nice horse.
And his mane and tail is yellow.
And his mane and tail is yellow. You know what? Some of the kids might not know what a mane is. Where's a mane on a horse? Yeah. It's kind of in the back of his head and down his neck.
And there's someone like this.
And a little bit right there. Yeah.
Like some horses like that.
Uh-huh. Do horses have short tails or long tails?
Some have long tails, some short tails.
Oh, okay. What about Kindle?
Kindle has a long one, but not this long. He has a long one.
Yeah.
Just like my hair.
Long one, just like your hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, do you like sugar?
I'd have lollipops and on strawberries.
Ooh, that sounds good. I like that too. Well, I wish that we lived someplace and we could make maple syrup together and maple sugar.
I have an idea.
What?
We can make a unicorn video next week.
We could make another video next week and do that?
A unicorn one.
Oh, yes. She wants to do a unicorn one. Well, this is Maria and
Boo Boo Head.
from Still Dreaming Homestead. We want to pray blessings on you and yours, in your house and out of your house, in the day and the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming. Can you say keep dreaming?
Keep dreaming.
Keep dreaming. Good night.